I am an honest guy who made an honest mistake. I was there. I survived. His breath was right against my neck. At 15, I too thought I could take on the world. I thought, this is it. This is actually the end. I'm not going to hurt you. I survived. I'm going to tell you about that. I am an honest guy who made an honest mistake. I was there. I survived. His breath was right against my neck. At 15, I too thought I could take on the world. I thought, this is it. This is actually the end. I'm not going to hurt you. I survived. I'm going to tell you about that. Hi, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Alright, so the next story in the Survivor series. It's really a bonkers one. It's really quite crazy. Thank you so much for getting in touch with your opinions and your thoughts on the Survivor series stories already. We have a few to go and then I will resume normal service. I think this will come back. I think this will be something I'll do in the future. But yeah, just a few more Survivors. Okay, this is Survivor in the really long-term sense of Survivor. Strange stories and two different stories which end up meeting, which I just love, and I hope that you will too. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Alright, there are two major players involved in this story. Let's take them one at a time. Okay, we'll start with Sonny Jacobs. What a name. Brilliant. Sonny Jacobs. I had to look this up. Sonny apparently comes from Sonia. I never questioned it before. It's not really a name you get a lot in Scotland. It's not really a name you get a lot in the UK. I think you maybe get it more in America, I'm guessing. But yeah, that's where it comes from. It comes from Sonia. So Sonny, she had been in a long-term relationship with a man called Jesse Tefero. From now on, we're just going to refer to Jesse Tefero as Tefero. So together, they lived in Northern Carolina. And they'd been together a good 10 years. And they had two small children. They had a 9-year-old boy called Eric. And they had a baby girl who was about 10 months called Christina. Sunny, well, how to describe her? Sunny was a really lovely, outgoing, just really nice person. She'd grown up in a family where, there wasn't a lot of money. But she'd made her way in the world, and 10 years ago she met Jesse Tefero, and she fell in love with him. Now, Jesse Tefero, or Tefero as we will know him, he was a bit of a bad boy. I've used the term bad boy there, but yeah, I feel it's a bit outdated, that phrase. I feel there must be a better way to say it. And also, I just don't know if I really believe in that whole, "ooh, everyone loves a bad boy" theory. Do they? Do people love a bad boy? Do do women go, "oh, I really want a bad boy"? I'm not sure that they do. Anyway, he was a bit of a bad boy. Tefero had been convicted of attempted robbery and crimes against nature. I didn't know that such a thing or such a term existed. I was like, what is that? What the hell is a crime against nature? Well, oh my God, I was in for a shock. If you know, when you're listening, what crimes against nature mean, you know what I'm talking about. I had never heard the term crimes against nature. I assumed, right, honestly, hand on my bloody heart, I assumed when I heard crimes against nature, I thought, oh, like actual nature. So it's like setting fire to trees, or throwing things into a river which might pollute it, or pissing on somebody's flower bed. Oh, no, no, no. No, I was so wrong. So wrong. So I went to Google and I looked up, what are crimes against nature? And I'll tell you this. Google tells me the crime against nature, or the unnatural act, has historically been a legal term in English-speaking states identifying forms of sexual behaviour not considered natural or decent, and are legally punishable offences. Okay? Sexual practices that have historically been considered crimes against nature include anal sex and bestiality. Shocker. So not just pissing on a tree, as I thought it was. Okay, I've got a clear picture now of what that is. The term first came about, right, in 1533. There was a meeting of the Buggery Committee and they put forward the Buggery Act. I mean, can you imagine that meeting? All of these people like sitting down. Hello, I'd like to call to order the Buggery Committee to discuss crimes against nature. I mean, come on. Anyway, that's what Tefero had been arrested for before. Crimes against nature, be that bestiality or anal sex, I don't know which of those two it was, but it was one of them, and robbery. And at the time of the incident that I'm going to describe, he was on parole. Now, it's February the 20th, 1976. And Sonny, aged 28, and Tefero, aged 29, and the two kids, they're in a car and they have stopped in a parking lot. So they were travelling So what they had done was they were on a bit of a road trip, and they were travelling home towards North Carolina, and they were passing through Florida. And when they got to Florida, they had a bit of a problem with the car. The car started to act up, and there was some issues with it. And so when they were in Florida, Tefero said, do you know what? I've got a friend who lives in this area. I haven't seen him in a good couple of years, but he's been good with cars previously. So I'll tell you what, I'll give him a call and I'll see if I can get him to come and fix the car. So they call this friend, who goes by the name of Rhodes Walter. From now on, we'll just call him Rhodes for ease. And Rhodes manages to fix the car. And Rhodes says, look, I'll come and I'll hang out with you guys for a few days. You're on a bit of a road trip. You're kind of tooling about in your car. I'll come and I'll, hang out with you. So they've got their friend in the car. And they reach this parking lot in Florida, and they decide that they're going to have a little rest. They're knackered from the driving. So, let's just get a very, very clear picture of this car. In the back seat, you have Sunny. And Sunny has with her 9-year-old son and her 10-month-old baby girl. Tefero is at the wheel of the car, and Rhodes is in the passenger seat. It's a busy little car. Now, the 5 of them in the car, they all fall asleep. They're just going for a little rest. They're knackered. As they sleep in this car, in the parking lot, 2 police officers who are just patrolling the area, basically. Just going about daily police duties of patrolling around. They see the car parked in the lot. And they decide, it's just routine, but they decide, let's check out this car. So what they do is they call in the license plate. I mean, this was 1978, so I'm imagining that was, that's not something you could have quickly done. But anyway, they call in the license plate, and it shows up that this car belongs to Jesse Tefero, and that he is a man on parole. Now, bearing in mind, he hasn't actually done anything wrong here. Nobody's done anything wrong. Police are just being cautious. And that's fine. Essentially, that's just police doing their job. Great. So the police officers, now knowing that the car is registered to someone on parole, they decide to walk over. And what do they see when they walk over to the car? They see 5 people asleep. A mother with her 2 kids in the back and 2 men in the front of the car. Fine. Okay? Fine until police see one thing that really gives them pause for thought. Really gives them actually a fright. They see a gun on the floor of the car. So what they do is they trap the window of the car, and they ask the 2 men in front to step out. Just step out of the car and we'll just have a chat. No one's in trouble. No one's done anything wrong. We'll just want to have a little chat. And this is where all hell breaks loose. Within the next 3 minutes, the 2 police officers, the officers who were just on parole and were casually checking a car, are both lying dead in the parking lot. Both officers have been shot to death. But by who? Who fired the gun? Who fired those killer shots? What the actual buggery bollocks is going on here? What happens next in terms of practicality is this. The two bodies of the dead officers are rolled into a bit of the parking lot which isn't visible to everyone and almost hidden in a way. The two bodies are rolled away. The car, the police car, is taken and driven 5 miles down the road and abandoned at some woodland area where it would take someone a while to find this car. It's the friend Rhodes who drives that police car and hides it. He comes back to the car and Rhodes, Tefero and Sonny have a panicked meeting in the car. What the hell are they going to do? There's now 2 dead police officers. Rhodes thinks he's hidden this car down the road. He hasn't really. What the fuck are they going to do? What they do is they start to drive. They start to just get away from this parking lot. They just need to get out of this situation. But let's ask that question again. Who fired the shots? Well, Tefero will say that his friend Rhodes stepped out of the car when the officers arrived and shot them both to death. Rhodes will say that the shots were fired from the back seat of the car and that it was Sonny, the mother of 2 kids asleep in her arms, who fired the shots. Sonny will absolutely deny any involvement in shooting the police officers. So once they have fled the scene, leaving the 2 dead officers, they think that they can get away. However, they're chased by police and ultimately they're caught, actually, because they end up in a traffic jam. The car ends up in a terrible, terrible traffic jam and police are able to catch up with them. This is where it all just gets even more muddy. When police pick them up, Tefero is the one who's in possession of the gun. He actually has it tucked into the waistband of his jeans. The gun is registered to Sonny. So the gun is under her name. Why? Why? Well, because Tefero is a bad boy boyfriend. Bad boys. He is a well, how easy is that to say? Bad boy boyfriend is what. Oh my god! If I ever was to do Extraordinary Stories Podcast the musical, I would so have to have a song. Bad boys boyfriend. I mean that would be great. Yeah, so he was the bad boy boyfriend. No one was ever going to give fucking Jesse Tefero a gun. He'd been in prison for attempted robbery. He'd, been in prison for crimes against nature. His very loving and very willing girlfriend, she took a gun out under her name, but it was for him. But this is the problem for police, because they've now got a situation where they're like, well, you're all saying somebody else did it. You're basically all pointing the finger at somebody else. However, Tefero, you're the one who's got the gun in your waistband, and Sonny, you're the one who the gun's registered to. So who do we believe? Who the fuck is telling the truth in this situation? So it's just so incredibly messy. They all just keep telling different versions of the same story. Oh, The friend says it was definitely Sonny. She shot it from the back of the car. Sonny says, no, I didn't. No, I never touched that gun. What further complicates everything is that all three adults in that car, they all have gun residue on their body. Some on their hands, some on their clothing. So police are just like, this is a mess. This is an absolute mess. And it really is. It's complicated because somebody or two different people in this scenario are a big, fat, liar, pants on fire. Somebody is not telling the truth. However, I'm going to tell you the truth. And the truth is this. The person responsible for firing the deadly shots into those police officers was the friend, Rhodes. Neither Sonny from the backseat of the car or her boyfriend, Tefero, fired the shots. In the panic, yes, they handled the gun. That's why there was gun residue. But both of them were innocent of the murders of these police officers. One person in that situation was guilty, and that was Rhodes. When the case goes to court, and all of the versions of the story are still flying around, and the couple are still saying, look, it was our friend who was with us, not us. The jury are so confused by the many stories that they find all three of those adults guilty. And so, the judge sentences Rhodes, Tefero, and Sonny to death. Sonny, 28, has her kids taken away from her and her life. What's important to talk about here is, and because I'm going to get to this in the next story, the fact that this crime involved two police officers and that two police officers were dead is really important within this story, because there is, well, we know this from other stories we've heard and other things that we've listened to. So often there's a rush to get someone in jail or get someone punished properly when it comes to the death of a member of law. And I get that, I absolutely understand that, and it's a bit protect your own, but the courts were so determined that these two dead officers would not die in vain, and that the people who killed them would actually be, punished to death. It's just like the sentence is just like so incredibly strong. And yeah, I get, of course, if you as a jury believe that the three of them plotted to murder these two officers, then yes, they should be sentenced to death, but it's just not really what happened. And now what you've got is, you've got three people all facing the death penalty, and in fact, only one of them should be. Only one of them is guilty. The other two are not. But I do think when it's police officers who are involved, the drama around it and the need for it to be seen, to be publicly dealt with, like we're dealing with this and we are punishing anyone who will touch a police officer, I think it just heightens absolutely everything. In cases, across the world, not even just this case. So this I found quite interesting. In the late 1970s, there was no death row for women in prison in Florida. It just didn't exist. The death penalty did exist for women, but death row didn't exist. So Sonny is put into solitary confinement, and she never sees her partner, Tefero, ever again. Never sees him ever again. The only contact is that they write to each other from separate prisons. I mean, can you imagine what those letters must have been like? Basically, Rhodes, the man who's got us into prison for something we didn't do, is the biggest dickhead in town. I mean, that's surely what those letters must have been. Just a big drawing of a dick, like it with his face on it, being like, "You're an absolute fucking bastard. You've put us in prison. You've got us the death penalty for something we didn't fucking do." I said that Sonny never saw Tefero again, and that's because of the three of them, Tefero was ordered to be the first to be killed by the state. And please be aware, this next part is horrible. Jesse Tefero was to die by electric chair. And I'm just going to hammer it home one more time, because I don't feel I've said it enough. For a crime he didn't commit. And when the day arrives, he is in the chair. There is a hideous malfunction with the chair, and it starts to spark. Now, with that amount of electricity going through his body, they can't turn it off. It can't be stopped, and he is in the chair for 13 minutes while it malfunctions, and eventually he dies with parts of his body on fire from the broken chair. When his heart stopped beating, his head was on fire. Absolutely horrific way to die. After this, there were rumours that the chair had been tampered with. Again, another. You don't mess with police. You just don't fucking mess with one of us. So prison guards had tampered with the chair to make his death even more horrific, because they believed he'd shot those two officers in that parking lot. The realisation of death was, at this point for Rhodes, really hitting him hard. Once the story that Jesse's death had been so terrible, and he panics. And he knows he is next to die. And then he knows that after that, Sonny will be killed. For Sonny, the fact that now Tefero is dead is just devastating, and she's in her solitary confinement, having to deal with the fact that the man she was with for 10 years and had 2 kids with has died in just a horrible way. She does say one thing that's interesting. She says, at this point, hopelessness was not an option. So, with Rhodes and Sonny soon to be killed by the state, we're going to leave their story for a few moments and move on to the second major player in this story. Okay, let's leave Florida and go to Ireland. Ireland! This is my Irish accent. Oh, it's so good. To a place called County Roscommon, or County Roscommon, as the Irish would say. Oh, so good. So it's 1980, and it is 2 years after the wrongful convictions of Sonny and Tefero. Now, the 1980s in Ireland, a very, very tough time. Very tough indeed. I feel like that's the understatement of the century. I don't know how to I mean, that was a really terrible time for Ireland. The Troubles, the crime rates were so high. I mean, the country was at war with itself, and yeah, I'll do a podcast on it one day. I'll do an episode on the Troubles one day. But my God, huge. In amongst all of that, there was a man called Peter Pringle. What is with all the excellent names of everybody in these stories? Sonny Jacobs, Peter Pringle. So Peter Pringle, he's about 29 years old, an Irishman. He's got 2 young kids and an ex-wife. And Peter is about to be caught up in an absolutely terrible event. So just to give a little bit of context, Peter, he had been involved in some gangs previously. Some crimes, yes, he'd been involved in things before, he'd been in some fights, he'd been in and out of prison, but on the day in question, and with the event that I'm going to describe, was Peter Pringle involved. So in County Roscommon, 3 masked men enter a bank and they are armed. They demand money and they make their way out of the bank with bags of cash. £35,000 they managed to steal. Oof, a lot of money. So police are called and 2 police officers pursue the robbers as quickly as they can. So the police, they manage to intercept the bank robber's car, and this is where the whole thing turns incredibly ugly. Shots are fired by the 3 masked men, and the 2 police officers are killed instantly. They lie dead in the street as the 3 masked men escape. So, this is huge. I mean, this hits the news in the biggest way. 2 police officers lying dead in the street. So who are these 3 men? The country is angry. It wants these men found. And in less than a week, 3 men are arrested for the robbery and the murder of 2 police officers. The 3 men arrested are, firstly, Colm O'Shea. I mean, could you get any more of an Irish name than Colm O'Shea? That would be like if a crime happened in Scotland and Donald McShortbread had committed the crime, for fuck's sake. Colm O'Shea. Next person to be arrested, Patrick McMahon. I mean, again, Paddy McMahon. Oh. And the third person to be arrested, Peter Pringle, the man that we really need to know about. All 3 of the men, well, they deny their involvement in the case. And I'm just going to tell you this right now. Colm O'Shea and Patrick McMahon, they were 2 of the bank robbers. Peter Pringle wasn't. He was nowhere near this event. He was nowhere near this crime. But police, because, and again, we are back to the same thing. Same as in the Sunny story. 2 police officers have been killed, and police, detectives, they have to work fast because there is public outcry, and they have to arrest people and go, we found them. We found them. We found these killers. Because the story's big. The story's in the news. They have to make these arrests. So they go to Peter Pringle, who wasn't involved, and they say, you, Peter Pringle, you're guilty of this crime. And he says, no. What? I wasn't even around. At the time, I wasn't even anywhere near it. And they say, yeah. Doesn't matter. We've got fibres that match you to the crime scene. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? They planted those fibres. We've got eyewitnesses who say they saw you at the crime. And he's like, how? What are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense. He wasn't anywhere near it. I mean, that is like police chapping on your door and saying, okay, we are arresting you for this crime. And you going, well, yeah, but I live 2 cities away from where it happened. And I was doing something else on that day. I mean, you're giving it your Shaggy vibes. You're giving it, it wasn't me. So she got me on the counter. It wasn't me. Na 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 na. It wasn't me. And police are going, well, do you know what? Too bad. We've decided it is you. For fuck's sake. And do you know what? I know police do so much good work, but there is a name and shame here thing. Because those 3 men who were arrested, 2 of them were guilty. 1 of them wasn't. They all said, no, well, we went there, it's not us, we were not guilty. Police beat confessions out of these 3 men. So Peter Pringle actually confessed to something he hadn't done, because police brutality meant that he just had to confess to something that he'd never been involved in. Why was Peter picked? Why was he targeted of this? Of all the men in Ireland, if you're going to pin it on just someone, anyone, why pick him? Well, it's because he'd been in trouble previously. So police looked through the records and they thought, okay, well, here's the guy who, yeah, okay, it's likely we can say that he was involved in it. And that's exactly how it worked. And I find that so scary. That is so terrifying, to think that you can just go through your database, let's just say it was him, because we need to find the 3 men that did it. So, as I said, this had made the news in a major way. The funeral procession for these 2 officers, as it should have been, was huge. I mean, thousands of people lined the streets to mourn the 2 dead police officers. When it comes to court, the 3 men are all tried, and they are all found guilty, and each one of them is sentenced to death. I find this so incredible. Do you know when the death penalty existed too in Ireland? 1990. In 1990 they still had the death penalty. I find that a right shocker. So, Peter Pringle, well, where does he say he was during the time that the crime was happening? He says, I was miles away from it. I was miles away from it. But where was Peter when it actually happened? Well, it didn't matter. It didn't matter at this point. He'd already been sentenced to death. But the truth is, Peter was actually in another part of Ireland talking with his ex-wife, because they had 2 young kids between them. And Peter was feeling like he wasn't really getting to spend that much time with his 2 kids, and he wanted more access to them. So on the day that this robbery happened, he was elsewhere talking to his ex-wife and saying, can I see the kids a bit more? Can I get a bit more time with them? Now the wife, she comes forward and she says, look, I can say he was with me when this robbery happened. We were miles away from it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at this point because there's such public outcry that 2 police officers were killed. Peter Pringle's been named. That's it. Job done. And now Peter awaits death. When he goes to prison, he gets put into solitary confinement and he spends 23 hours a day in a tiny, tiny cell. He's allowed out twice a week for exercise. Around this time, the death penalty in Ireland, it's being challenged. People are asking questions, not because of this case, but just in general, people are asking the question, do we need to be rethinking the death penalty? Do we need to think, do we actually need more evidence? Do we need to do more? What's happening? Peter gets his date for his execution. And he has a month to live. Now, 2 weeks before Peter is to be killed, he receives a visit from the prison governor. And it's to tell Peter that his case has been reviewed and instead of death, they're going to reduce his sentence to life in prison. Peter's relieved by this information. Well, I don't know if relieved is the right word, but he's like, okay, fine. I still want out of here because I am innocent, but at least he knows he's not going to be killed. And I love this. I fucking love what he does here. Peter uses his time, because now he's out of solitary confinement, right? Because he's off of the death row type thing. He's out of that. So he can now access everything else in prison, because he's just someone who's going to spend life in prison. And he starts to study the law. Much like Ted Bundy. Much like good old Ted Bundy did. I mean, I'm not saying, not in the same way. I mean, Ted Bundy was like, what was that? He's a maniac. He's like, hello, I'm Theodore Bundy. Don't any of you dare to try and imprison me, because don't you know, I'm Ted Bundy. I'm very important. And what a dick. But anyway, Peter, he goes through the process of lots of reading and lots of understanding of the law and lots of trying to get a grip on what he can do in the situation that he's in. I'm imagining it in my head and it's fabulous, but I know it won't have been like this, right? I mean, this is what 1980s in an Irish prison. In my head, it's like that scene in Legally Blonde when Reese Witherspoon is like flicking through lots of law books trying to get into Harvard, and she's like, and there's like music and all that in the background. That's what I'm seeing in my head, but it won't really have been the same for Peter. Anyway, this is what Peter does. He manages to get a lawyer interested in his case, and eventually, through blood, sweat and tears, they get the case of Peter Pringle and his involvement retried. Peter, he puts into place all of the evidence which proves he was not a part of that armed robbery. He was not someone who shot a police officer dead in the street. And after a lot of time in court and a fuckload of money, the charges against Peter are dropped. It's discovered he is actually innocent. He's a free man. But he's been in prison for for 17 years. Unfucking believable. Unbelievable. I mean, it's insane. He's gone from I'm about to die in prison to life in prison to free man. And pretty much he's done it all himself. Let's pause on Peter. Let's pause him right there. We're going to go back to Florida. In the same year that Peter has been freed, Sonny and Rhodes, they still await death by electric chair. Now Rhodes is the next to die, and here's what he does. He goes to his lawyer and he says, if I confess to the killing of those officers, can my sentence be reduced to life in prison rather than the electric chair? And that is exactly what happens. He admits, after 17 years, that it was him that fired the gun that day in the parking lot, and that Sonny played no part in the crime, and that Tefero, who had died in the electric chair in the most horrific way, played no part in shooting those police officers. And so, Tefero's dead. They can do little to fix that. What they can do is that they can let Sonny go. With his confession, it absolutely backs up everything that Sonny has always said, that she didn't shoot a gun from the back seat of that car. And Rhodes is now standing in court and he will say, I take full responsibility. They did nothing. It was entirely me. Oh, it's a shocker. So you've got Sonny, who has spent 15 years in prison for something she didn't do. And all the way across the seas in Ireland, you've got Peter Pringle, who spent 17 years in prison for something he didn't do. What makes this a truly extraordinary story? Why would I pick to tell the two stories of Sonny and Peter? Is it the fact that they both went to prison and faced death for crimes they didn't commit? Is it the fact that their crimes were eerily similar? In both stories, 2 police officers were killed. Well, it's all of that, but it's also that in 2011, guess who walked down the aisle, got married, and committed to a loving life together? Sonny and Peter. Incredible. Dun, 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 na, 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 na. Unbelievable. Sonny and Peter found each other. They found each other through a death row survivor convention. I mean, what a hot night out that sounds. A death row survivor convention. Both of them met. They shared stories. I mean, that must have been insane. Like, Sonny must have been like, yeah, I spent 15 years in prison. I faced death row for the death of 2 police officers. Peter must have been like, hang on, I spent 17 years in prison for the death of 2 police officers. I also faced death row, and neither of them were guilty. But they fell in love. They fell in love. Their stories connected them together. And so they got married. They now live in New York. And the 2 of them, they've managed to rekindle the relationships with their kids. And now they are living happily together. They both say it's not easy. It's constant. It's like they both live, with each other with a constant reminder of what they've been through. But they say also our stories, yes, they're strangely similar. And yes, we were so far apart in the world. But we're a constant reminder to each other that there can always be survival. We can always survive when we need to. And I think what they survived in prison is absolutely admirable. I think if I was in prison for something I hadn't done in solitary confinement for 17 years, I would have gone mad. But the fact that the two of them came through that experience, weirdly similar experiences, but now that they've found each other and that they're married and that they're happy is just incredible. Together they've set up something called the Sunny Project, and it's where they use their experience to help people who have been wrongfully convicted or wrongfully sentenced to death row when actually they were never involved in a crime in the first place. I found this statistic shockorama. Shock a fucking rama. Only 4% of people in America who are ever exonerated for a crime that they didn't commit receive any form of compensation. Neither Sonny or Peter ever received a single penny or a sorry from the people who put them behind bars for crimes that they didn't commit. I'm just delighted that the 2 of them found each other and now they're married and they're living so happily. And so ends the story. Alrighty then, yes. A slightly strange take on the Survivor thing, but I sort of love that. I just love it because I'm just like, oh my god, survival wise, like that's some hardcore fucking survival, isn't it? To survive in prison for that length of time, but also I just think it's so bizarre that their crimes that they were wrongfully convicted for are so similar, but they were miles apart and now they found each other. I think it's really nice. Yeah, great. Okay, if you want to get in touch, please do. You can email me, extraordinarystoriespodcast@gmail.com. If you want to join the Facebook group, please do. It's a wonderful place to be. You'll not regret joining. It's fantastic. Twitter, Instagram, I'm there, I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. You can find me. You can get me all the time. If you want to support the podcast, please do. You can support through Patreon. That's really it. So, until the next time that we speak, I hope that you have a nice time in your life. I hope that the world treats you well. Okay? Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. would imagine from the look on his face. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over.